Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Unstoppable Dad Project. Father's Day here in Australia tomorrow. So happy Father's Day to all the dads that listen to this podcast. As always, I appreciate you. This week, I just wanted to do an episode talking about my experience as a dad. Now, I am by no means a guru or by no means anyone that probably anyone should be listening to, but I just wanted to use this opportunity with Father's Day in Australia tomorrow. I know we've got a few international listeners, so happy Father's Day for when it was in your particular country, but here in Australia at the time of recording this particular podcast, it is Father's Day tomorrow, and I enjoy Father's Day because it's a celebration of being a father, being a dad, and celebration of the dads that are in our life. So my father, but for me, most importantly, over the last 7 years, it's been a good day for me to kind of reflect on what I enjoy about being a dad, what I've learnt from being a dad, and just really just enjoying the presence of my family. And there is so much that I could go into, and trying to fit all this into 20 minutes, mate, or under 20 minutes might be hard, or it might be easy. The reason I wanted to do this was really just riff and talk about, my experience being a dad over the last 7 years. And, I still remember when I first found out that I was going to be a dad. I remember that my wife had a little package that she did up for us, and I came home from work that particular day, and in there was a little pair of shoes saying that. And I got very emotional at that time. I broke down. It was something that we, as a couple, were obviously trying to get to. We wanted to be parents, and then from there we we went through the pregnancy. And when I say we, my wife went through the pregnancy. I was there as emotional support. I didn't do too much, and then I'll never forget going to the hospital. Um, and I'll never forget the first time seeing my daughter. And I, it's probably not for me. It wasn't like the moment that I seen her for the first time, because we were in the delivery room and she came in and they gave her like the vitamin K shot and everything like that. And it was all, it felt very rushed, and it wasn't like this kind of overarching. It was surreal, but it wasn't like this overarching feeling for me. It was more when we got out of the delivery room, and then we were sitting back in the room after she was delivered, and I was actually having a proper nurse of her for the first time. And there's a photo that we have of me, with this grin from ear to ear like a Cheshire cat on my face, nursing my daughter for the first time. And just, oh, that's what I remember. And that was when it kind of all come to the point where, like, that was the moment where I realized, like, this is real. This is this little human being. And then there was a couple of days in hospital, and then from there, I remember the drive home, like, and I will never forget those 2 moments. I don't think I will never forget that moment where we got to sit there as a family for the first time, and we got to, like, I got to hold my daughter for the first time properly, not just in the delivery room where everything was rushed and there's a lot of things going on, but, afterwards, where I was able to actually sit down, look at her, and just take in the fact that we'd brought this little human, well, my wife had brought her into the world, but, we were responsible now for another life. And then that drive home was like one of those moments where I think reality had dawned on me that this is now our responsibility to look after this little person. And it was the most controlled, slow drive home that I had ever done. I remember driving on the highway going back to where we were living at the time, and I've not been so nervous for a drive probably since I was going for my license test or doing driving lessons with my dad, when I was 16, 17. Like, I had not been that nervous for a drive in, I can't remember how long, and I vividly remember almost every minute of the drive home. And then from there, it was about just being parents, like trying to work this thing out because there's no instruction manual that comes with the baby when you have the baby. There's no one that has gives you a guide onto what you should and shouldn't do. And it's just about working it out. And lots of sleepless nights, uh lots of, I guess, trial and error with a lot of things. For me as a dad, and I know this is a really common feeling with dads, for that first 6 months feeling a little bit useless in the whole process, just because, you know, the baby is so dependent on its mother. So as a dad, you don't really have a lot of interactions. You obviously try to, and you try to interact, you try and help out as best you can, but there was a little bit of a feeling of uselessness and even guilt there where I couldn't be doing more to kind of help with the baby. Like, I remember those feelings really vividly. And I remember over the last 7 years with Soph and before our son came along, there's a lot of negative emotions that have come up over that time too. There's feelings of guilt that come up regularly. There's feelings of, am I doing enough? Like, am I being a good enough parent for my children? Am I teaching them the right things? And I think I've come to the conclusion that I'm going to pass on a lot of stuff to my kids, and some of it's going to be positive, some of it's going to be negative. And I still, to this day, and I believe I will probably forever for the rest of my life, worry about how I'm going to mess them up and how I'm going to impact their lives. And there's always that hope that I can impact their lives in a positive way. The lessons that I'm able to teach them and the actions that I'm able to show them are going to be positive ones, and ones that are going to help them through their own life. But there's this constant worry day in, day out, that am I setting a good enough example for them? But the biggest thing that I try and do as a dad, that I've always tried to do, and I've made this, is that let them know that they're loved. And every day I will tell my kids that they're loved, both of them. I will give them a kiss, I will give them a cuddle, um, probably almost to the overarching degree. With my kids, I'm very affectionate. Um, I want them to know that they're loved. I also want them to know that they are supported in whatever they do. I also want to try and help them build some level of resilience. And it's funny because this is like this constant fine line and this constant battle where I'm going back and forth, where you want them to feel loved and supported, but you also want them to build their own level of resilience. You want them to build their own problem solving skills. And as Soph's gotten older, and now that she's at school and she's past that stage where she's starting to do things on her own, it's it's hard to put her into those situations where she's going to fail and she's going to have to struggle in a controlled environment, because you do want them to feel supported, and you feel sometimes, or I feel sometimes, guilty for putting her into those situations, even though they're controlled and they're very, very measured, right? Because I want to help her. My natural instinct is to try and, help her get through these things. But now that she's, and I know there's going to be a lot more of these times to come in the future, as she gets older. And I know that a lot of this stuff for her is only starting, and then we're going to have, Ollie follow on after that. He's probably not quite at that age yet, but there's little things that are starting to happen where it's going to have to happen for him as well too. But I think for fathers, especially with daughters as well too, as chauvinistic as this might sound, what I'm starting to find for me is the difference between the way I respond to my daughter compared to my son. I can see already that I'm a lot more protective of my daughter than I am of my son, and that doesn't mean there's any less love or anything there. It just means that this is just a natural inclination, right? Um, but as she starts to get older, trying to put her in a position where she's going to have to work for things, and that's resisting that. And it is almost I feel it's like it's a selfish urge. And this is a thought process that I've gone through a lot. It's a selfish urge to want to help her because it's satisfying a need for me to not see her struggle. And if I'm constantly jumping in and helping her and doing things for her and pulling her out of hard situations now and in the future, then that's, while it's satisfying my urge right now, it's not going to help her as she gets older. And it's a constant battle jumping back and forth. And I think that we're always going to feel like we're not doing enough. If you're a dad that wants the best for your children, which I'm sure every single person that listens to this podcast and there's a lot of, look, there's a lot of people on both sides of the fence, but I think if you're listening to this podcast, there's a better than average chance you are a dad that wants the best for your children, and you're going to do a good job because you will show them that they're loved, and you will always be striving to give them the best. But I think that if we give, and this is just my opinion and I guess my philosophy, if I'm giving them everything and I'm helping them with everything, while it's satisfying a selfish urge for myself now, and it's not going to help them into the future, because I want them to be determined. I want them to be resilient. I want them to be kind people. I want them to be good people. And but most importantly, I want them to live their own life. So part of that is going to be them building a level of resilience for themselves so that they can cope with that later on. But the whole journey of being a dad is just one that I've probably grown to love more over the last, let's say, 3 to 4 years, because in those early stages, I was so worried about so many things. There were times when Soph was younger where, we were running our own business and business wasn't going good. So I was so stressed and overwhelmed by the fact that all just putting a roof over our heads and putting food over the table, that I wasn't able to enjoy some of the things that I probably would have liked to of being a dad. There wasn't that, and that's a hard thing, and it's one I know that a lot of dads struggle with. We have to take that provider role in a lot of our families, and not wholly. Our wives are obviously there to support and things like that, but depending on your individual family dynamic, you know, that's something that is never going to go away. Like that feeling that you need to provide for your family. And as I said, like there was some times, especially in those first couple of years of being a dad, where I was so stressed and overwhelmed by external circumstances that I wasn't able to enjoy it. Now, over the last 4 or 5 years, 4 years, we've had some super stressful times. Maybe in hindsight, more stressful times than what we did back then. But the difference is I've been able to appreciate each moment for what it's worth. I've been able to actually disconnect from that stress and become more in tune with what's going on and enjoy the moments, enjoy, and I've spoken about this on another podcast, enjoy my kids. Like, and this is part of as they get older, it's like there's almost more things for us to appreciate, but I enjoy watching them grow. I enjoy watching them develop. I enjoy just being there and being able to spend time with them. Like, I am so grateful for these little human beings that are in my life every day. And yes, there is always something that comes up that pisses me off, that, makes life hard. There's a lot of work. There's always work to be done. But the thing that makes that hard work always worthwhile is just being able to, whether it's even if some days it's only for like 15 minutes, just being able to stop and be in the moment with my kids, because it is so cool to watch them become their own person. It is so cool to watch their little personalities develop. Watching the learning journey that like Soph's going through now. Now Ollie, he's going to be in kindy next year. So, and then he's going to be school the year after, but he's now starting to, you can see full sentences being formed and phrases, and his level of information retention and his little personality coming to the forefront, which is different to his sisters. And just being part of that is just such an amazing thing, and something that I'm so thankful for. And, you know, I just love being a dad. And despite all the worry and all the stress that goes with it, the good times in those moments far, far, far outweigh any negative that happens along the way. Even seeing some of my bad habits come up when my kids are doing things and the way they interact, because as they get older and they start to get their personality, they're going to reflect, or they're reflecting elements of my personality there. And because and good and bad, you know, some good things that I do and some bad things that I do. Like, kids are a mirror at the age that mine are at right now of us there, because we're the most influential people in their lives. And I understand that's going to change as they get older, but it's also cool to do that because it makes me more self-aware of things that I'm doing, especially as they do something and then it's like, oh shit, they got it from me. It makes me more self-aware of what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis as well too. And the whole journey for me over the last 7 years, and it changed again when we had Ollie, and then again, like, there is some negative feelings that go around when you've got multiple kids. Like, am I allocating enough time to both of the kids? Do they both still feel as loved? Like with Soph, you know, and she sometimes communicates to us that, like, she feels a little bit more, she doesn't use this word, but let's say neglected, because now there's two people in the house where two kids in the house where she's used to having one. Like, that's another negative emotion that's come up now that we've got two kids. But again, the positive of that for me and for our family has been that, like, watching those two interact with each other and grow up together, like, that's been such a cool thing to observe and been a part of. Like, they will just play for hours together. They're starting to fight a little bit more now that they're getting a bit older and Ollie's getting his own voice, but, like, they love each other, and watching them, you know, share in that development together and sharing that growth together it's just such a cool thing to be part of. And I know I'm going to try and wrap this up now because I could probably talk about this for forever. And the whole point of this episode was a little bit selfish, really, just for me to kind of get on, talk about my experiences as a dad, things that I've learnt for myself, but most importantly, the things that I love about being a dad. And I know there's going to be times where, you know, we're not going to be able to enjoy it as much. And I know there's been times where, especially in the early stages of being a dad, where I wasn't able to probably enjoy it as much as I should have, because I wasn't highlighting in my own mind the good things that were happening. I was too worried about the external circumstances. And yes, we need to be concerned about that. And we need to put in work on our businesses and our job and on ourselves. And there's going to be that feeling of guilt whenever we take time away from our family. But they'll understand. I look back on when I was a kid, and I think eventually we understand. We understand where our parents were coming from, especially when we become parents. And that feeling of guilt, that feeling of stress and everything that can come with it on the negative side of it, for me, there is far more on the positive side. I am so thankful for being a dad. I am so thankful for my kids, for my wife, for my family. And if you are in a position where maybe, like, it feels like it's getting too much, try and disconnect for 15, 20 minutes in a day. Just sit there and watch your kids, whatever you've got, and just appreciate what is in front of you right there, what is going on. Because I get it, it's hard when you're in it, and it's hard when you're trying to push to provide the best life for you can for your family. But if we don't spend the time now, especially if you have young kids when they're young, to appreciate the little things that are going on, we're going to blink and they will be moving out of home. They will be living their own lives. And while we always want to strive to be better and we always want to strive to provide a better life and set a better example for our kids, we have to appreciate the moment that we're in, and we have to appreciate the opportunity we have in front of us to be in the moment with the amazing human beings that we've been able to bring into the world. And That's why I love being a dad. I love being a dad just because I love the journey. I love the constant evolution. And, maybe every year on Father's Day, I do a podcast like this and I can just talk about what's changed over the last 12 months, because it's going to be a constant evolution. It's going to be a constant change. And I love it. Like, I love it. I love my family. I love my kids. And I am so very, very thankful and privileged to be in the position that I am in every single day, to be able to observe, to be able to watch, to be able to teach, and most importantly, be able to learn from them. So let me know. Let me know what your favorite part of being a dad is. Let me know what you've struggled with over your time of being a parent. It's been such a wonderful 7 years for me, and I'm excited for the future. But happy Father's Day to all the dads out there. I hope you have a wonderful day. I hope you get to spend it with your children and families, and say thank you to your dad and your parents on the day as well too, because they helped you get into the position that you're in right now. So thanks for that. If you like the podcast, make sure that you're subscribed on all the podcast platforms. Make sure you share it around with anyone who you think might get some value from what we do. But other than that, I'll talk to you next week. Bye.